Small Girl Toni and the Quest for Gold is a picture book about imagination and the power of storytelling. Hi, I'm Dan Skinner, and welcome to the Kids Bookshelf. Ahead, we'll explore the book and talk with the author about the inspiration behind it. I requested and was provided with a copy of the book, but this video is not sponsored. Giselle Anatol is a professor of English at the University of Kansas. She teaches courses on children's literature, Caribbean literature, and the literature of the African diaspora. She joins us to talk about her first picture book inspired by the life and writing of Toni Morrison, Small Girl Toni and the Quest for Gold. Giselle, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, tell us about the inspiration for this children's book.
Oh, well, I have been, a tremendous fan of Toni Morrison's writing for years and years. And I teach a Toni Morrison course at the University of Kansas. And I also teach children's and young adult literature. So I've used Toni Morrison's picture books in my children's writing for children courses. I'm especially fond of the Big Box, but she has the Who's Got Game series, which is adaptations of Aesop's fables. So there are a few of those. And so she was, for a very long while, very passionate, I think, about the ways that children's literature can be used to reach multiple audiences, not just her adult fiction for adults and children's literature for children, but the ways that, children's literature and picture books especially become this moment of sharing, intergenerational sharing, because often parents or teachers or librarians are reading to and with and for children. And so they become these opportunities to have discussions across generations. And so when she died in 2019, I was just heartbroken. I knew she, her health had been declining, but I just was so devastated. And so I started working on this, a kind of picture book as a means of tribute to her. And it was the kind of the process of mourning for me. It was really kind of in line with some children's books that I had created for relatives over many years. I think the first one I created for a goddaughter and for nieces and nephews and friends of the family. I would create these little children's stories and I would illustrate them, not exceptionally well, but with watercolors. But they were a great way of a creative outlet for me. I tried to get one of the first few published, or a couple of the first few published, and they were rejected. And I thought, I have enough rejection in my professional life. I don't need it. It's something I do for fun. And so I stopped trying to get them published for a long time. But then this one, 20 years later, it got published, and I'm still kind of stunned about it.
Well, we'll learn more about this particular book in just a moment. It is a picture book, so for what age group is this intended?
I would say it's being marketed as a book for kind of the 4 to 8-year-old range as a picture book. But as I mentioned, I kind of wrote it for myself. And I'm 53, and so from 4 to 53, but I also, and older, as I was writing, I felt like I was kind of channeling Morrison's, so much of Morrison's imagery and these different characters from her works. And so there are bits of her adult fiction kind of incorporated into the book. And so I think for people who have read her, for adults who have read her work, it could also be a really pleasurable experience.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about some of those Easter eggs you sort of put into the book, because that's
Sure.
very clever. But tell us about the story here. What's the story that readers are going to find?
Sure. Well, over so the short version is there's a child, a young child inspired by Toni Morrison, so a kind of 6 to 8 year old Toni Morrison who is on a quest for gold. She has a vivid imagination. She loves to tell stories, but the adults in her community are telling her that stories can't do anything, that it's kind of nonsense. And so she decides to go on this quest for gold, and her stories kind of lead her. And this collection, there's a collection of children, her siblings. She takes her siblings on this journey with her to find gold. And by the end, they kind of they discover that the gold that they are seeking is in very everyday things, not in some elaborate treasure.
So would you read just a small portion of the book for us?
Sure, I would love to. And I can just read the first couple of pages that sets it up, if that's okay.
That'd be wonderful.
Okay, great. Small girl Toni had a wild imagination. She chattered about ghosts and ghouls, musketeer duels, almost getting eaten by a grizzly bear, a girl at school with licorice for hair. And as this narrative is happening, there are people in the illustrations who are commenting on this her storytelling. So one is saying, you better stop telling these outlandish stories, girl. And another says, tell us another one, honey child. And another neighborhood child says, where does she come up with this stuff? And Toni says, my stories are going to change the world. And again, neighborhood commentary. Change the world? How? A story's just a mess of words. Change the world? How? You couldn't make change for a quarter. Change the world? How? Can you even change a diaper? Hoots, hollers, snickers, and screams. The small girl steamed, and then she dreamed. Stories can change the world. Grown-ups say that stories can't save jobs or build nicer places to stay, but if my stories have gotten me sent to the principal's office and to bed without supper, maybe they can lead me to a whole heap of treasure. Then we could make safer places for kids to play. We could find people to check on the old folks each day. Or maybe I could spin a yarn so splendid, so spectacular, it would be worth its weight in gold. Small girl Toni plotted. Gold is heavy. I'll need help carrying it. And that's where she ropes in her siblings.
So for younger children in particular, an adult is going to be reading this book to them. So do you sort of keep both of those audiences in mind as you were writing the book, both the child and the adult who's reading the book?
Yes, I think keeping a limited number of words on the pages so that it doesn't become too text heavy and, where a child's mind could wander. But I also, I'm so just delighted by Raisa Figueroa's illustrations because her illustrations are so rich and robust and full of light and shadow. So they really do help to keep the reader's attention. The child audience member, I should say, maybe if they can't read, they can follow along with the pictures. And then I love language. I love the way that Morrison played with language. She was always so attentive to sound in her literature. And so I do like to play with kind of rhyme, even though it's not a rhyming book, but different ways that language sounds to the ear to hopefully carry the story as well.
And I want to refer back to something you said before, because this is something the kids aren't going to get, but the adults who are fans of the writing of Toni Morrison are going to get. And those are those references, those nods to Toni Morrison's work that you put in the book. So tell us about a few of those.
Sure. And I do have at the end of the story, there is a note, an author's note, which kind of teases a few of these out. But for example, in the I should say that the whole narrative is very, very loosely based on Song of Solomon, Morrison's novel. From 1977, I believe it was first published. And in that novel, there's the main character, Milkman, is sent by his father in search of gold, this treasure. And along the way, he discovers his family roots and family stories, and gains a much greater appreciation of community and family. And so one of the characters in Morrison's novel, she's a very, very old woman. Milkman comes across her in this kind of house that's, it's a big mansion that's deteriorating. And there are just dozens of Weimaraner dogs kind of running around. And it's kind of eerie, and in that he thinks she should be dead. She is much too old from his father's stories, but she has a very seductive voice. She sounds like a very, very young woman. There's this kind of alluring scent of ginger surrounding her, and her voice seems to be keeping all of these dogs kind of very calm and at bay. So there's this sense of kind of mystery. And I think in that character is called Circe. And I think that's Morrison's nod to Homeric tradition, and Circe from the Odyssey, who turns Odysseus's men into pigs that are kind of roaming around her yard. But so I have a character in the picture book called Circe, and I tried to spell it phonetically. But so she has several dogs that the children in the book try to take on a walk, and the dogs are wild and the kids are small, and so the dogs end up dragging the children around kind of on this part of their adventure.
One of the things, this is the first picture book that you've published, and picture books, some people may look at them and think, oh, it must be easy to write a picture book, but there are constraints with the picture book. You only have a certain number of pages, a certain number of words, basically, to tell your story, plus your words are just half the story. The illustrations are the other half. So I was wondering about what that whole sort of creative process was like for you, putting together a picture book.
Yes. I mean, it's really, it's fascinating to be on this side of it. As I mentioned before, when I first created those books for people in my family, for children in my family, I was doing the illustrations in this formal process with a publishing house. They have certain artists that they work with, and I was really delighted that they gave me the opportunity to choose from several different artists and illustrators. And so I received sample work, and then I got to choose the one that I thought would match the story best. And when I saw Ms. Figueroa's work, I was so excited. Her work seems magical to me. I have no idea how she accomplishes what she does on the page, but she plays with light so beautifully, and I think you can see that on the cover of the picture book. There's the small girl Toni character is holding a sack of pears, of these golden pears, and there seems to be the light of gold reflecting up onto her face. And that was just really so captivating to see on the page in that way, in the art. And so I was really delighted when she was able to do the project. She wasn't working on anything else at the time. And so she takes my words, and then she creates sketches, and then I see the sketches, and then might make suggestions if there's anything that doesn't fit. And so that process takes about a year, or it took about a year for this project. But we were never in direct contact. So I've never spoken to her. directly. We work through the editor and through the publisher.
Well, now that you've had a picture book successfully published, do you see more in your future?
Yes. I am working on another book right now. I think this picture book started in a place of tribute. And you mentioned Easter eggs, and I think that the title itself, Small Girl Toni, is taken from Beloved, actually. There's a very tiny scene in Beloved where the main character, Setha, is seeing her mother, who is enslaved, kind of off. And there's another woman who's taking care of her. This other woman, I think her name is Nan, calls her small girl Setha. And it was that just turn of phrase was, it really just stuck with me, this endearment. And so I decided to kind of pull that in for my character, Small Girl Toni. And as I was working on the revisions, I was really excited to think about how I might bring other Black writers to young children in picture book form to kind of introduce their work. So I am currently working on the next picture book as Small Girl Zora, loosely based on the childhood experiences of Zora Neale Hurston.
The picture book is Small Girl Toni and the Quest for Gold by Giselle Anatol. Giselle, thank you for talking with me today.
Oh, thank you so much for your questions and allowing me to share Small Girl Toni with more people.
If you'd like to purchase Small Girl Toni and the Quest for Gold, I've placed a link for you in the description below. Well, thank you for watching this edition of the Kids Bookshelf. And if you'd like to see more videos about children's books and their authors, be sure to like, subscribe, and click on the bell to be notified about future programs. I'm Dan Skinner. Until next time, keep sharing the gift of reading.